This is The Whole Truth, brought to you by the Greenville County Democratic Party. From local city councils and school boards to the South Carolina legislature and the nation, we provide a clear-eyed view of the whole truth surrounding the decisions, the policies, and the politics that have a direct impact on your family, your neighbors, and you. Are you feeling depressed? Are you emotionally drained, or your frustration tolerance is bottoming out? You will enjoy this informative discussion with licensed upstate pediatric clinical psychologist Dr. Jessica Rabon, who helps children, adolescents, and families build emotional resilience and manage anxieties associated with what is ongoing in our world right now. Here's the chair of the GCDP, Stacey Mars, with Dr. Jessica Rabon.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for another episode of The Whole Truth. And with us, we have somebody that I've been following on Instagram for a little while. So I'm really excited to talk to Dr. Jessica Rabon today. She's a licensed pediatric psychologist based right here in the upstate. She is a proud Furman University graduate. Dr. Rabon has dedicated her career to helping children, adolescents, and families build emotional resilience, navigate deep-seated anxiety, and manage complex mental health challenges. Ooh, that sounds like a lot. She is also a published researcher and co-editor of a book, A Positive Psychological Approach to Suicide. But beyond her incredible clinical practice, she has stepped forward as a powerful, resonant voice on social media, using her professional insights to advocate for change and promote political candidates. Dr. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Well, yeah, we are so happy to have you. And I will say this before we, ask any questions or anything. But I think the first time I saw you, you were advocating for Courtney McLean. And I was like, whoa, who is this lady? I was like, wow. And so, that made me, I decided to follow you because I was like, I need to see what she's up to, because I looked at your Instagram and that kind of stuff. And so since then, you've really kind of become a voice in that space, which I found interesting because a lot of people, that's a big step, especially when you in the field that you're in. A lot of people like to be seen as, I guess, neutral, if you will. And so it was interesting to see that happen. And so with that being said, in your day-to-day work, you focus extensively on anxiety, coping mechanisms, and support systems. So from a psychological perspective, what is this hyperpolarized political environment doing to our collective mental health? Because I can already tell you how I feel about it. And how are you seeing it manifest in everyday communities?
Yeah, great question. So, you highlighted a lot of it. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. I've seen a lot of depression. The polarization too, I see a lot more relational conflict, people feeling like they can't have effective communication with family members, or a lot of avoidance because of the highly polarized nature of our socio-political climate. And, on the individual level, yeah, we're seeing depression, anxiety, things like that. But then on the collective level, we can relate to one another because we're all going through this. But what that can look like in some healthy outlets is activism, which I do see a lot. But in maybe less healthy outlets, a lot of brooding and rumination and kind of getting stuck and othering people. And none of that is good for our mental health. And doing that can lead to feelings of isolation, loneliness, and, in the day-to-day, I feel from the clients I see and work with, there's just this heightened level of being on edge. And it's not just their mental health. It's like every aspect of their life is affected, which in turn is impacting their mental health, and we can get into specifics if you want, but, we can look at the housing crisis and, families not being able to afford gas and groceries. Well, that alone is a stressor. That's going to impact their mental health and anxiety. We can look at just Medicaid and not having access to resources such as therapists or the medical care they need. That's just another layer. So I think there's just so many layers. And although we're going together, we're in it together as a collective, what you do with that can really impact if you're going further down the anxiety, depression route, or if you're taking that energy and trying to turn it into something positive.
Absolutely. Because I know even when I'm talking to people, they're like, Stacey, I'm scared.
Mm-hmm.
Because you just never know what the next day will bring. You go to bed and all of a sudden we're at war. You go to bed and he's like stripped something from a community. And so I'm looking at gas right now. Like, it's expensive. How are people supposed to get from one place to the next? You got to get to work and that kind of thing. So I mean, that definitely takes a toll on people, right? And you were talking about even just the whole social media aspect and how I think everybody is angry on social media. Mean, everybody is angry on social media. So a lot of professions in your field choose to stay strictly behind the scenes, like we, talked about earlier, keep the personal views strictly compartmentalized. What was the turning point for you when you felt like, I can't just treat the symptoms in my office anymore. I have to get on social media and actively support candidates. What made you decide to do that?
So I will say I've always been somewhat political on social media, but it was much more like, this bill came out. These are the facts. These are the implications. I've always done a lot of advocacy for the LGBTQ plus community. I work with a lot of LGBTQ youth. And so I would bring in politics that way or talk about how the sociopolitical climate affects what is coming into the therapy room. But it was much more general. And the turning point, the 2024 election was a big one. But honestly, and this is going to sound really silly. So there's a TikTok trend, or there was a TikTok trend, and I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like when somebody asks me my political views and then you like pose like different politicians. And I saw that trend going around. And at the time I had been following Dr. Annie Andrews, Dr. Jermaine Johnson. I found Courtney McLean and absolutely loved everything she was advocating for. And I was like, this would be a fun trend to do, kind of like when somebody asks me my politics.
I remember seeing you do that.
And from that, like Courtney followed me, Dr. Annie followed me, Dr. Jermaine followed me, some other people. And I was like, I have a platform. This is not to boast numbers by any means. Like I don't have a giant platform, but over 18,000 on Instagram, over 57,000 on TikTok. And I was like, I have a platform that I need to be using my voice to really show the people of South Carolina, like who we could potentially have in office. I need to speak up and use my platform to talk about not just what's happening at the federal level, but what is happening in our state. Like, yes, I've built my platforms off of mental health and things like that. But like we were just talking about a few minutes ago, everything going on is affecting people's mental health. And I feel like from an ethical standpoint, but also just like my values, I would be remiss to not be talking about politics and specific politicians that I think are doing really good work and are on the grounds if I didn't take advantage of the platform I have, because I'm going to be able to reach a lot more people on social media. And I mean, I have these conversations in my real life, but like, I couldn't tell you the last time I was in a room of 18,000 people, but I can make a video and it can reach and people that don't even follow me. And so I just started posting and endorsing, and I'm still very mindful going back to the neutrality because, I value my license and my job over social media as much as I love social media. But I feel like and you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I feel like I approach things very like fact-based. Like, these are the facts. These are my values. This is why this person aligns with my values. This is good this person is doing, or check out this person if you're into X, Y, and Z. things like that, or just general, like go out and vote because it's important for change. And just since then, I've connected with so many other like South Carolinian content creators that are speaking about politics. And it's just been such a great community. And I'm like, why wasn't I doing this sooner?
Right. No, I mean, like I said, that's how I found you. And I'm also very shocked at how many content creators are in South Carolina. But it's a lot. It's a lot. But yeah. And so, I mean, you're right. You do approach it from a very fact-based place, which made me respect you even more. I mean, you just put it out there and people can take from it what they will. Yeah. But yeah, so, we were talking a little bit ago about how social media can be a toxic space, especially when navigating state and national politics. So as a psychologist, how do you protect your own mental peace? Because I mean, I know you have 18,000 followers and 56 on another platform. Like that's got to be a lot because I look at our social media and sometimes I look at the comments and I'm like, oh my God, I got to get out of here. These people are nuts. So how do you protect your own mental peace and model healthy boundaries while being visible and vocal online?
That is such a great question. So I do have a lot of other content creator friends, whether they're in the political space or the mental health space. So I do consult and rely on them a lot. So, if I get a comment that upsets me or makes me question like, ooh, did my post come across that way? A lot of times I'll like just screenshot it and send it to a trusted friend. I'm like, hey, give me feedback on this. I trust you, things like that. I have also learned to know my limits on social media. I have learned not to comment on things or make videos early in the morning or late at night because I'm usually more dysregulated and tired at those times. And then also if I'm noticing, I'm getting a lot of notifications and I feel like I'm spending a lot of time just in the comments section, logging out, just taking a break. And I'm like, I don't actually have to respond to everything, like giving myself that permission. Another thing I do a lot with regard to content creation, especially if it's like, oh, I see a comment and I feel like I need to address this, I'll make a video and then I don't post it. And then I'll watch it back a day or two later and be like, is this something I want to give my time and energy to? Or is this something I can just let slide? Because the reality is like social media isn't real life. And if like user 28573 never hears from me, they never hear from me. Also, the block button. That's great.
Right. It is.
Well.
It is, for sure.
Yeah.
And I've had to kind of take some of that into consideration myself because, like I said, I will go on and, there are times when we'll post something, I'm thinking, no big deal.
Yeah.
And then people come out of they're just coming out of the woodworks and it's like, what is wrong with you people? Right? So when I start to feel myself getting anxious, I know I'm like, okay, maybe take a break, like get out of this and don't go back to it. So I know that, but that's really easier said than done. Like you actually practice that.
Absolutely. A lot of times what I do, and this is not just with like comments, but if I'm noticing I'm spending a lot of time on social media or even like consuming a lot of heavy content, I will just like stick my phone in a different part of the house and like not have access to it. Right. So I'll like leave it in my room or things and give myself actual space. I also like going for walks. It's really grounding. I know that sounds really simple, but like, hey, let me put my phone down. Let me get some fresh air, go for a walk, help myself regulate. But I think you do have to have those boundaries on social media regardless, but especially if maybe you're posting things or talking about things that could be considered controversial or people have different opinions. And what we know about people online, they're keyboard warriors. That's why there's that phrase. Like people are going to say things that they would never say to your face. So a lot of time we'll take inventory. Is this even worth my time responding to? Is this somebody that's even going to listen to me, or did they just comment this to argue? And if they just commented it to argue, it's not worth my time and energy and effort.
Absolutely. So speaking of that and how, whether you're deciding whether you should, make the effort, I know that a lot of times many people do try to use logic and facts and detailed policy arguments to reason with hardcore MAGA believers. I am of the mindset that that is a waste of time, but that's just me. And because it feels like it almost always backfires, right? So what do you think is happening psychologically when someone digs their heels in deeper despite clear conflicting evidence?
So we call that cognitive dissonance. So there isn't a psychological phenomenon, cognitive dissonance. And basically, for anybody that doesn't know, it's when you are presented with information or engage in behaviors that misaligns with your previously held beliefs. And when we're presented with information that does not align with our previously held beliefs, it causes a state of distress. It stresses us out. And more often than not, all humans do this, we are more likely to lean into our previously held beliefs even harder, more so dig our heels in, like you said, than integrate this new information because it is easier. Because it's easier to say, no, I'm right. I'm going to ignore whatever you just showed me versus saying, wow, I now have to sit and reflect and challenge what I have believed for this amount of time, or I have to admit to myself that maybe I was wrong or my perception was skewed or I was lied to. And that's something I've been seeing a lot online. Like people try to reframe in the sense of it's okay to admit that the media lied to you so that you're not placing the blame on yourself. You're placing the blame on media or your upbringing or your community that told you these things. But it is really hard. Like, I'm sure you and I could think of examples of times that we were wrong about something and we're like, well, whatever. Like, I'm just gonna.
Well, I mean, I'm stubborn. So yes, that is for me.
Exactly. And if you think of MAGA particular, but I think we could say this for a lot of groups. If somebody has believed in a person since 2016 for a decade, it will be hard to say, hey, the past 10 years, I was actually wrong. There are some people doing it. I'm sure you have seen the Leaving MAGA movement, but it is hard and it takes a lot of work and a lot of self-reflection. And I think also a lot of people don't want to do that work, MAGA or not. A lot of people don't want to sit and reflect on where their beliefs came from, why they believe these things, admit they're wrong. Those are all hard things to do. Just like we were saying, setting boundaries is a hard thing to do. That's an even harder thing to do and a long process.
So I guess my question becomes, is it worth it to have these conversations with them? It just feels like you're talking to a wall 99% of the time. So do you continue to still have those conversations with them, or what do you do?
Yeah.
Because
I'm going to give... you go.
No, you're fine. You're good.
Okay. I was going to say, I'm going to give the most psychologist answer ever and say it depends. Because I think it really depends on the intent of the other person as well. And are we talking full-blown MAGA? Or are we talking Republican that voted for Trump, but maybe not full-blown? Because to your point, I think if somebody is stuck in the beliefs, unwilling to hear another perspective, yeah, it's probably not worth your time and energy. But if you approach a conversation, you're like, hey, I have a different perspective on this. Are you willing to hear me out? And I'm willing to hear you out. If there's that kind of civility to the conversation, or at least an openness, maybe it's worth it. But I think also it depends on where do you want to spend your time and energy, and what's your goal? Is your goal to convince somebody of something, or is it your goal to have a better understanding of where they're coming from. Yeah, it's really hard though, because I think it's a balance between protecting your peace and mental health, but also wanting, especially if it's somebody that like maybe is a family member or somebody like you have a relationship with, that can be really hard because you're like, I want to keep this relationship, but it's hard when we're just living in two different worlds.
Sure, absolutely. So, speaking of, we're heading into a major election cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that's been at the back of my mind as well, because anxiety is clearly going to go up. They're probably going to do more and more extreme stuff as we get
Mm-hmm.
closer to the midterm. So I'm sure people's anxiety is going to just spike across the board. What are 2 or 3 practical boundary setting techniques or coping mechanisms you recommend for people who just feel overwhelmed by that 24-hour news cycle?
Yeah. I always say turn off the news, which I know is a privileged thing to say. I want to fully recognize that. Like that comes with a lot of privilege because, if you can disconnect from the media and give yourself that space, it probably means that you're not living whatever is going on and directly impacting you. But you have to at least set boundaries, even if it's turning off the news after 7 p.m. or you're saying, I'm going to give myself, I have a friend that does this, like, I'm going to give myself 1 hour a day to consume all the news media. And after that, I'm going to put my phone down, things like that. So I limit or turn off your media consumption. I guess part 2 of that could also be, if you don't want to do that, find more like objective or centrist news outlets to consume it from, because that's the other thing. The 24-hour news cycle media is inflammatory, and it is inflammatory for a purpose, because that's what gets people clicking and reading. So if you're like, I need to stay informed, I need to know what's going on because this is such an important election cycle, go to Reuters or Reuters. I always say that one wrong.
Same.
Straight Arrow News is another one I really like following, or even like Snopes and fact checkers, things like that, and getting your news from there, because at least the information is not going to be presented in a like doom death war way. It's going to be like, hey, here are the facts, and that can help. Like you still might be very upset with the news, but at least you don't have that activation. I think another big thing as we're going into an election, make sure you're doing the basic self-care, taking care of yourself. And I know that sounds so simple, but in practice, when we are stressed, the first things that are going are our sleep quality, our eating habits, and our exercise or movement. It doesn't have to be exercise, movement. So be very intentional of still getting good sleep at night as much as you can. Make sure you're getting your 3 meals a day or whatever you typically eat. Make sure that you are getting movement in, going for walks outside or whatever you do, yoga, because those basic things are going to be so important to keep you at like a baseline level of regulation. If you're in a heightened stress situation and those things go out the window, you're physically, mentally, emotionally going to be not well. And I guess the third thing I would say is community. So surround yourself with people that make you feel happy, bring you joy, are like-minded, that maybe you can share your worries and fears, but also that's not all you're talking about. I want to make sure you're talking about other things as well, so that you're not isolating, so you're not withdrawing, so that you're not just sitting at home ruminating on your fear and anxiety, which are all valid. And it's not helpful to just sit and think of the worst case scenarios.
Right. I mean, doing all that, though, kind of helps you to clear your head to see it in maybe a better frame of mind. because I mean, you said all that, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of proud of myself because I try to do a lot. I just because being the chair of the party, it can be pretty stressful, and I never know what any day is going to bring. And there are times when I'll get a call or a text message from a news outlet, and they're like, "Can we get a quote?" And I'm like, what do I say? What do I do? Like, and that kind of thing. Or if something is going on, it's like I have to respond to it or put a statement out. The first thing I try to do is clear my head so that I can make a statement that is worth hearing and gives the gravitas to the situation that it should. But I've found, like you said, going for a walk is just like, it does so much for me. And having friends that I can talk to just outside of like, I make time for my friends. People are like, you're so busy. I'm like, yes, I am, but I'm also going to make time for friends and family because that helps keep me grounded. The last thing I can afford to do is stress out and then lose it.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, I guess I was unintentionally kind of doing all that, but I just know I try to do what helps me. And so it was good to hear you say that.
Yeah. I mean, and if you already have coping skills, work for you, if deep breathing works for you, if you have your like morning journaling routine, journaling is a great coping skill. Make sure you're still doing those things. For whatever reason, like I said, when we start getting stressed or overwhelmed, the basic care, the things we enjoy, the things that make us feel good are the things that go out the window because we're just like, I need to work. I'm consuming all this media information and like you're doom scrolling and things like that. And it's like, no, let's stop, put the phone down, call a friend, go for a walk, journal what you're feeling. So whatever you're already doing, like routine, structure, keeping that, understanding that there needs to be some flexibility because it's a different season. But if you can keep the basics, it's going to impact you positively more than you realize.
Sure. And I feel like journaling is so underrated. Not enough people do it. Not enough at all.
It's so helpful.
It is, for sure. So you've done some significant research and co-authored extensive work on positive psychology in an era where a lot of people feel deeply cynical or exhausted, which I am exhausted. How do we cultivate genuine hope and successfully turn political anxiety into positive local community action?
I love this question so much. One, I think you have to look for the positive. We are, as humans, wired to seek the negative. That's why we are much more self-critical of ourselves than we are kind to ourselves. We are wired to seek the negative. So intentionally seeking out the positive. One of my favorite things online in the political space is seeing when people, post about like these positive wins in states that I don't even know a single person in. And I'm like, okay, if that random town in Arkansas can do it, like so can
we can do it here. We can do it here.
Exactly. Like, seeking out those positive wins, no matter how big or small. I think, I keep going back to community, but there is power in community. So, getting your friends and family together, advocacy work, even if I don't want to be negative. So let's say if you set a goal, let me rephrase it this way. If you set a goal, and even if you don't make that ultimate goal, if you have made steps towards that goal, that is still progress. We need to get rid of our black and white, all or nothing thinking. So if you're taking a few steps forward, even if you, going back to the conversation, if you are able to have one productive conversation with somebody on the opposite side of the political spectrum, even if you don't change their mind, but you're like, hey, it didn't end in name calling or they didn't dig their heels in. They're just kind of like, oh, okay, I haven't thought of it that way. Like, I still disagree, whatever. That is still progress. And I think we are seeing a lot of progress across the nation. I mean, we're recording this on the last day of early voting, and the numbers of the turnout are giant. Incredible. And like, yes, we still have primaries coming up, and then we still have November, but like, you have to seek out those things and be like, okay, there is movement, there is change. Like, yes, there is still a lot of work we need to do, but let's focus on those positive things while doing the work rather than just focusing on how far we still need to go.
Right.
So I hope that.
No, it does. And I think and tell me how how you feel about this, but a lot of times I tell people, do something, find a campaign, get involved.
Yep.
Like that will take care. That to me, that takes my mind off of, to a degree, what is going on, because I'm focused on the work, right?
Yeah.
I know what's going on. I do, because I'm doing the work trying to stop it. But I always go back to Michelle Obama's do something. Do something. You know, and to me, that helps, because they're like, how can you sleep at night? I sleep fine because I'm tired, because I've been doing the work.
No, I completely agree. And I think going back to social media, with social media now too, there are so many ways to get involved, even if you can't be like boots on the ground, door knocking, things like that. You know, you can call your legislators. And I know people are like, it doesn't make a difference. Like, I'm surprised, honestly, Lindsey Graham has not blocked my number with the amount of times I've called. And it's honestly a lot of the same conversation, but like I, for a while, had the same morning routine on my drive to work, would call our representatives and just say whatever issue I had that morning. And, you know, even if they never actually listen to things, like I am taking steps, but also to the fact of do something. If you think about values, and values work is really important to me, like what do you value, what's important to you, and how are you living a life in alignment with those values? If one of your big values is advocacy or change or social justice, do something. And it doesn't have to be, you know, running for office, right? It can be, getting involved in a campaign. It can be phone banking. It can be sharing posts on social media. If you're scared to like know where to start there. Follow, you know, candidates that you really like the work they're doing. You know, I know there's the fish fry, last weekend at the time we're recording this, like attend events like that. To get involved in that community, because you are doing something. And if you're doing something, for most people, it makes them feel better and like they're making an impact, even if it is a small impact, but all those small impacts add up. Like I think, going back to your question about, you know, what made you start, you know, promoting specific candidates, it was also the recognition that like, we need to start locally and build up if we want to see big change. And I mean, I logically knew that, but it wasn't, I don't know, until this past election cycle that I was like, you know what, I need to be doing more for my community. I can address the federal level all the time, but where I'm going to make more of an impact is making connections in my community. And if we start with those steps and build up, so maybe you're starting on a local, like, city council like campaign.
City council, yes. It's next year. If you're thinking about running, come talk to me.
Things like that. So like, you know, it's starting there, getting involved, getting out and meeting people. But action also makes you just feel better. And like you said, you're distracted from other things. Also, just like being out doing stuff, your mind is focused, you're moving your body, you're connecting to people, all of the things I've already said that are really good for your overall well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not going to get on my soapbox about how local is just as important as federal. You highlighted it enough. So thank you. And thank you so much for being on the podcast with us. Like, I have definitely been looking forward to this and speaking with you. And thank you for the work that you are doing to try and help keep us all sane and help move us forward. So again, like I said, thank you. And everybody, y'all have a good one.
Thank you.
The Greenville County Democratic Party appreciates your time listening and watching the Whole Truth Podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. While you're there, please follow us, like or subscribe to this channel to help us spread the word. The Democratic Party needs you to get actively involved and join us at future events. You can find out about them at multiple locations like the GCDP website, greenvilledemocrats.com, and browse the events calendar. You can also keep up with us through our social media presence on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, and Threads. Look for @GVLDem. Thanks again for listening. Let's get out there and do what we can to rebuild our government into one that serves us all. Thanks.